Hello, hello. Timothy Wenger here from The Man Effect, coming to you with The Man Effect Facebook Live, or live interviews, number 13. However you want to do it. Anyway, this week, in the episode of The Man Effect Live interviews, I am interviewing a friend of mine, a new friend, and awesome guy. We're bringing him on right now. Oh, German, it's saying I can't. It's adding him right now. There he is.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing, man?
Good. I think I found a good way to put this. So hopefully it shows my face. And not, that's okay. Whatever.
Dude,
It'll work.
it's perfect. So I was just doing a brief introduction, saying that I'm Tim from The Man Effect, and I was bringing you on, German, from... Put your plug in. Come on, go.
Oh, Modern Manhood Podcast. Road to my next gen, man.
I'm just teasing you.
That's my best. Yeah, no worries.
You're good. You rolled with the punches there. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. This is another episode here. If you're watching and you have any questions for this podcaster, who I'm going to poke his brain, ask away, and just let us know you're watching. Say hi. So, German. Am I saying it right?
Yeah. It's pronounced German, but that's okay. A lot of people call me German. Not a big deal. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, I slaughtered it, and you didn't stop me?
It's okay. It happens every day that someone calls me German, so I'm not really too concerned about it. It's a thing that happens.
Cool, man. Well, why don't you just briefly give us a little plug about your podcast and kind of how you got into it real quick?
Sure. Started Modern Manhood. It was a way for me to explore the depths and the complexity of what masculinity is in a very positive and a very inclusive manner. And I got to that through working for a lot of community organizations. One here in Edmonton, Alberta, called Men Edmonton, which helped me, start the whole podcast process out.
Oh, wow.
It's about 2 years ago now that I started this. So I've been volunteering with Men Edmonton for about 3 years now. And then it just kind of rolled on from there. I just started interviewing a lot of my friends, and then it just started growing into things that people that I really cared about. And it's growing ever since then. So I'm very happy with the podcast, and I'm very happy where things are going. And there's new and awesome adventures that are still happening with the podcast. So I'm happy with that.
Very cool. So, well, I'll ask you a million questions about it. But the first question I try to ask everyone in these interviews is my classic question, which is, if you were to describe what it means to be a man in one word, what would it be and why?
It's a really good question. I thought about it when you sent me those questions. I thought this really hard. And I think the word I would choose is free.
Free?
Like as in freedom. Yes. It's something that I don't know if it's a goal. I don't know if it's like a virtue. I don't know what this is yet, but that's the thing that I always go back towards, as I yearn for men to be free of some of the shackles that they face. Beyond that, like, I work with a lot of guys. I work with a lot of young men. I also work with a lot of older men with men's groups and boys groups. And the common thing I always find is that there's a lot of people just yearning to be free. And it's yearning to be free from their own insecurities. They're yearning to be free from their own anxieties. They're yearning to be free from their own sense of identity and just wanting to be themselves. And they find that hard to do. So I don't know if it's the description of masculinity is now, but that's where I want it to go. You know what I mean?
So kind of what I hear you saying is you're using the word free as in what you observe men want it to be. Like a man is free and knows who he is and isn't held back. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's like, I subscribe to this notion around male liberation instead of male confinement. And I think liberation is such a key message towards, just people just being through life. And the questions that I always see and I always hear about is like, what can I do if if I'm feeling upset, or what am I going to do if I want to have a good relationship with somebody else, or with a partner, or how do I end up with a relationship? Or, those are very common questions. And most of the time it's just be yourself and be confident. But I think like it's hard to do. And I think that's really what I want to see in more, especially with guys that they've been stuck with this idea of what masculinity should be, but they have an idea of what masculinity is already, and they're just scared to actually express that. And that's what I want for guys, is to be free of those shackles of what it is supposed to be a man, but to just be a man. It's not, and that's whatever they feel like, whatever it is that it is inside themselves, that there's no need to have these kind of constraints.
Yeah. Interesting. I love it. And I think I'm saying it right. It's Louis. It says good description. I liked your description there. Thanks for
thanks
for commenting on that. That's really cool, man. And so I'm really curious in your process, in your journey. You've interviewed me, and it was a fun time. And so now it's kind of my turn to kind of dig in, and we might get to the questions I sent you. We might not. But so I'm curious in your journey from when you started to now, did you think you would keep at it this
long? It's a good question. I had one of my interviews, I think it was episode 9. And there was a journalist, and he was like, it's a very prominent journalist in Edmonton, and he came over and he asked me, he's like, what happens when you run out of a bunch of like feminist men that you were going to talk to? He's like, what happens then? He's like, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to run out. And it's been 2 years and I haven't run out yet. And because I've been spreading this throughout the world. So it is kind of like, I didn't envision it to be this way, but I did have a vision to say that I wanted to interview as many diverse people that I could. And for that to really grow was to start reaching out and start thinking about masculinity in different ways. So not just through gender theory or sociology or psychology or whatever it is. I wanted to think about it in ways of how we just deal through the world, through the government or through sports or through the family structure or through relationships. Like there's so many different ways you can talk about masculinity. And that's why I feel like I could do this for a long time.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm curious, what are some oh, it just chopped out there.
Sorry.
Am I still here? Sorry.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So like, what are some things that have changed in your mind as you've gone down this journey of actually taking action, talking to people, asking them about masculinity? What has changed in your own mindset on the topic, if there's any notable ones?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. When I started doing the interviews and I started talking to people, I wanted people who were, very sound and confident and like really wanted to give to the people like what it is, this idea that I had in my head. But right now, the feeling that I have, which gives me more value and more ideas when I do these interviews, is that I like people who are curious. I like people who are not as confident, but definitely more confident in their wanting to know more. I interviewed a bunch of like self-help dudes. And I got a bunch of like canned answers and I hated it. So, and I'm just like, oh man, you're just telling me what I want to hear. I really wanted to like find some real true introspection, because I feel like,
yep.
I don't know if you feel this way, but like I really think that as guys, we really lack how to be introspective and how to be actually self-aware, and also like asking questions not about the world but also about yourself.
Yeah.
And I love people who are just asking questions about themselves, and even just finding an answer that says like, man, I don't know the answer to this question, but I want to ask the question.
Dude.
I love those people.
Yeah.
That to me is like a thing that I really admire, and I really want to see more of. And guys, and I want to do this for myself too. Like, I don't know all the answers, and I'm always trying to ask questions.
You don't? Come on.
But it's funny because a lot of people, I get a lot of emails, and they're people asking questions, and they want answers, and I keep telling them, I'm like, I don't have the answers. I can tell you some people that might have the answers, but I don't have the answers, and I don't think those people will have the answers either. You have the answer; it's in you, but you gotta be a little more introspective about it. You gotta be a little more self-aware. And I see this with the clients that I see this with the boys that I see, and it's hard for them to actually, get that answer, to say like, I don't know. They just figure that out yourself. So yeah, I think that's the biggest journey for me.
Why don't you give people some context too when you say the people the boys that you work with and stuff? Why don't you?
Yeah, sure. That's a good point. So in my day-to-day work, I work with a lot of young men, and I do a lot of mental health and healthy relationship work through an anti-violence spectrum. So I work out of a grant called Engaging Men and Boys to Prevent Family Violence. And through this, I do a lot of healthy relationship through boys groups, and I go through schools, and I talk to teachers, and I talk to administration, I talk to parents, I talk to everybody about anti-violence. Not only that, I help co-facilitate a men's group through my work. It's a drop-in men's group. I see different type of guys. Like I had one yesterday, and it was awesome. Like I had a father-son person there, and I had people who were just struggling through life, but are just courageously going to these groups and courageously going to these things and trying to ask tough questions of themselves and just trying to go through life. And it really informs the work that I do, and it really informs the way I want the podcast to be, and the way I want the community to be.
Because you're actually practically doing things. Like, it's not just ethereal in your mind or something like that. You're out there on the field interacting with people outside of interacting with them digitally. And so that gives you a completely different exposure than online.
Totally. I hate patting myself in the back. A lot of people do this work that I do. A lot of people do the frontline work that I do. And they deserve a lot of credit, because I'm not a savant in that either.
No, I'm not saying that, but like generally a lot of times there are people who start movements or podcasts or whatever that might not have the elbow grease in that industry for real. And so I can just appreciate that you are not only doing the work, you have done it for a while, and you continue to do so. So I appreciate that, at least.
Yeah. I appreciate you, Tim.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that.
So what's cool is I feel like even though we may not agree on every topic around masculinity or whatever, I really appreciate your openness to discuss it. And so I really enjoy asking questions that people don't really have answers to, that they've just have had assumptions around a lot, So I like that you're open to that, though. And so in your journey, what are some things that you want to know more about? Those questions that you don't really have answers to, but like, what are things that right now you're like, what am I trying to answer? What am I struggling with? What is that for you right now?
That's a great question. Ooh, okay, let me think.
No rush.
No worries. I think this is not something that I don't have an answer to, because I feel like I have an answer to, but it is something that for a good long time, until I kind of came to a response that I felt comfortable with. This is just an example of the method that I went through around this. And even this answer, I feel like it might not be the right answer, but whatever. So anyways, like I mentioned, I volunteer for this organization called Men Edmonton. We're going through some restructuring, or we're going through a lot of value assessments. We wanted to make sure that we wanted to have an inclusive space, and we wanted to make sure that the community stuff that we do is not only inclusive but challenging. And the problems that we're having right now is with issues with the men's rights movements, and sometimes questions that are divisive, a little bit more not really in good form, or just wanting to cause, like, they wanted to cause shit, for lack of a better term. How do we deal with that, but also like bring these guys in? Because to me, what I see with the men's rights movements are just guys asking questions, and guys are curious about their own well-being, or curious about their own struggles through life, through masculinity. They get brought into groups that I feel are not the best, but at the same time, what I see is a bunch of guys that are struggling, and they need to bring into a community. That's what I see. So how do we deal with these guys that go into these groups that sometimes just want to cause shit? And the answer that I have with that, because right now I'm working to create our own group with Next Gen Men, and that question kind of came up to be like, how do we help these guys too? So the answer that I have is usually to say, like, I come from a very pro-feminist bent. And I don't have, right now, and I did have a qualm calling myself a feminist. Now I don't. I feel like saying that I'm a pro-feminist kind of says that that informs the work that I do, and that informs the work that Next Gen Men and Wolfpack and everything else does. At the same time, like, if you don't agree with that, I'm totally cool. Just be open to listening to it. If you listen to it and you come back and you're like, you know what, it's not my shit, that's fine. You tried. I'm happy. We can have more conversations. I'm totally cool with that. But at the same time, know that this is where I'm coming from. No, this is what I know of, and this is what I feel like. And it's a constant struggle for me to say, like, man, some of those guys are just jerks. But at the same time, there's a lot of those guys that are behind that jerk that just want some help, and they just want to be connected, and they just want community. And I want to help those guys. I really do. And I can't do it myself. At the same time, it is something that I struggle with at the current moment.
So as someone who declares, as you just said, that you declare yourself as a feminist, male feminist or whatever, what are your beliefs or feelings around hypergamy? Have you heard of that word?
Hypergamy. Can you explain that for a second? No, I haven't.
If you haven't heard it, it won't be a good discussion. But just look it up sometime and get back to me.
I will.
And yeah, when it comes to the men's right movement, I actually just posted this week a interview with Rollo Tomasi that I did. I was able to land an interview with him, so I was pretty pumped about that. What I find is a lot of these guys, they have encountered either their friends have committed suicide from failed relationships, or like there's just a lot of pain, and
yes, absolutely.
And I think they have a lot of valid points. But I feel that a lot of times the men who are the most outspoken may not be the best representation of the group. So
I agree with that. I totally agree with that. And I think that's like I said, I'm happy that we're having this conversation, and I'm happy that we're trying to figure out, like, trying to tease each other, like, in the sense that we're both going towards the same goal. We're both going to say, like, man, there's a lot of guys that are hurt. There's a lot of guys that feel shame. There's a lot of guys that feel just an inner hurt in them. And I don't want to just throw out, like, just say, hey, man, you should just read bell hooks. But at the same time, like, I understand and I feel empathy for them, and I want to help them. At the same time, though, like I also understand and the pain that some men's right activists and some men, and I'm not saying all of them, I'm saying some, and I would say probably the most vocal minority, have caused a lot of hurt to other people, and I don't like that.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, there's a bunch of guys behind that person, or there's a bunch of guys that are in that kind of realm that are they just want answers.
Yeah.
They just want help.
Yeah.
Exactly. They absolutely have some friends that have committed suicide, or they've lost their job, or they've lost their family because the court system, or they've been abused and they can't find a good home. I get that. That totally makes sense to me. I understand their hurt. I feel that there's a better way. At the same time, though, I want to call them in. I don't want to call them out. I want to call them in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very cool. I have a huge heart to hear from all sides of the spectrum and just hear people's stories and connect with them as much as I can. So that is
I can tell.
Part of my reality for sure. Get some more light here. It got dark. But so why do you do what you do? What keeps you going?
That's a good question. I go to work and I see and you mentioned this before, like I go to work and I see people struggling, and I see people just trying to reach out, and that really guides me. But saying that, though, like you heard me talk about that, I also do it for my friends. Like I do it for me and I do it for my friends. When I started doing the podcast, it's funny because I got a lot of questions from my friends that I knew for years, right? And just saying, like, can we talk about this, or can we talk about something that's hurt them in their life? And I thought that was so neat. And I thought, like, man, I should be doing, like, the work not only involves me doing something publicly, but I also need to do something inner. And I thought that was a thing in it. And I also was like, man, like I messed up too, because I didn't ask the right questions for you. And once we asked the right questions, a lot of things came out. And I do it for them. I do it for the people that I love. It's more of like think globally but do locally.
Yeah, of course.
That's kind of my perspective on that. So yeah, it gives me strength on that. And I love hearing all the comments and everybody just like tuning in and giving me some good vibes and good feedback.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love that too.
And how many episodes are you at right now?
I just recorded, let's see, I think it was 59 episodes now.
And how many downloads are you running? Are you doing pretty good now?
I would say about 300 per episode.
Oh, wow. That's great.
It's good. I wish it was a little better, but I feel like, that's just marketing, I feel.
Yeah.
I feel there's a lot of people that would want to hear it if they could hear it. And also, like, I'm an amateur podcaster, so
yeah,
like I got a lot more work to do in the audio department, and that's something I got to work on too. So,
well, we just have a comment coming in, or a question coming in here in the comments. Louis is asking, do you think the war on masculinity is an overused term? Before you answer that, anyone who's tuning in, please feel free to throw in your questions or comments. I would love to hear from you, and just let us know you're watching. So what do you think, Erman? Do you think the war on masculinity is overused term?
Yeah, I think, you know what? It's interesting because I went to a masculinities conference in Victoria, BC, and I talked specifically about the media and masculinity. I think the media and masculinity are doing a terrible job in framing the way that masculinity is thought about in society. We use, like, I understand the term toxic masculinity. I understand the term the war on masculinity, but there are systematic terms. They don't involve the actual individual themselves. So we talked about these things in a very systematic level, but we don't really talk about the actual individual. So if somebody doesn't grasp onto something saying like, hey, a bunch of guys are doing this, and of course people are going to get defensive because I'm like, well, that's not me. That's not me or my friends.
Yeah.
But what the media is saying, they're just talking about it in a very system level wise. So I mean, the media is kind of stuck in this one area of masculinity critique. And I think the war on masculinity is just a critique on traditional Western masculinity. We don't talk about what's next. We don't talk about the next stage.
Yeah.
I would suggest to look up a gentleman named Joseph Gelfer. He is a professor over in England. I actually interviewed him in one of my episodes, and I really admire him because what he does is that he has a newsletter, and he has these 5 levels of masculinity. And what he does is he says, okay, this is the media that's striking specific types of levels. What he's saying is that level 3 is a critique of masculinity. So most of the media is stuck in this critique of masculinity, but we haven't gone to level 4, which is multiple masculinities. And there's a very small amount of medias that reach that multiple masculinities level. And then there's level 5, which is saying, like, is masculinity just a normal, like, do we even need the word masculinity anymore? But at the same time, I don't think society's there yet, but like, he's very good at just like saying, okay, this media is just level 3, this media is level 2,
interesting,
this media is level 4. So if you really want to, if you're really interested in figuring out what type of media are actually talking about masculinity in a proper way, I would suggest looking up Joseph Gelfer. He does a really good job on that.
Interesting. Very cool. And I would say my response to if the war on masculinity is overused term, I honestly haven't heard it that much. And even if it is a term, I mean, I have heard it here and there, but I think it's kind of like, is there a war on femininity too? I don't know. It's just frustrating to me. It's always weird. There's these like lopsided statements all the time.
Yeah, it's exactly it. It's exactly a lopsided statement. You're totally right.
So it's like, if you believe in toxic masculinity, you should also believe in toxic femininity. Like, if you're believing in this spectrum, like, there should be an equal balance of it. But
yeah,
anyway,
it's this duality function, right? It's just like either one or the other, and you're like, well, the world is way more complex than just the two things.
No,
right?
Man, toxic masculinity is like now calling someone a Nazi. It's like this like way of just being like, you're like no good, like get out of here. So anyway,
yeah, it's turning into a weird insult that nobody really understands anymore. So yeah,
but well, out of the questions I sent over to you, did any stick out that you wanted to talk about? Because we only got a little bit more time here.
Look back on that here. Yeah, let me see. We're gonna look back on these questions. I think you've asked some really interesting topics, and here, 1 second here. What I was very interested in, because I saw it and I was like, ooh, this is pretty good. How important do you think it is for men to be vulnerable?
Yeah.
I think that's a very, very key question.
Okay.
Why did you ask that question?
Because I'm
going to turn this interview onto you. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. We're rolling with it, man. I'm chill. In the men's right movement, vulnerability is highly regarded as weakness, in the sense that you should never show weakness to a woman. But in the feminist side, it's men should display their emotions to women. And so I'm always curious to hear people's thoughts on it, because I feel like it exposes what side of the line you are on in argumentation. Yep. So I'm just curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, you will. I mean, you know that I run from a very feminist lens, but saying this, from the people that I see on men's groups and from the people that come in to drop in men's groups, the biggest advice we always give them is to be aware and lean into your vulnerability. Because once you actually are aware of where you're vulnerable and where your defenses are, you find a lot about yourself. And I always call it courageous vulnerability, because it takes an empathy in itself. Empathy, being empathetic, is a vulnerable action. But being empathetic not only is something that is important through life, for other people, but it's damn well important for you. Because empathy, the way that I like to describe it, is not only just putting yourself in someone else's shoes, it's taking the experience that you had from somebody else and just putting that aside, taking the advice that you feel that you might need to give this person and putting that over there, because they don't need that yet. All they need for you is to feel what they're feeling. And it could be something that you feel might be just quote unquote dumb or not important, but to them is the most important thing. And for you to learn empathy is an actual skill. It's a skill building thing. It's like doing reps at the gym. It's like taking a piece of weight, taking a 10-pound weight and doing some bicep curls, and then going to 15, then going to 20, then going to 30, and moving on. Because empathy, if you learn empathy, it is a good life lesson. And being empathetic is being vulnerable, because what you're doing is you're giving yourself in to this other person and feeling what they're feeling. And that is hard, and that is courageous. Always want for not only guys, everybody to be vulnerable, because you learn so much about yourself. That's why I feel like it's like one of the most key important things just in general in life. And like I struggle with this too, like, and I preach it as much as I can, but sometimes it's hard for me, and I'm not perfect in this either. When I catch myself, I have to apologize that I'm like, oh, that wasn't an empathetic response. I need to be better. But but it's what do you think about still got to work on.
Yeah, but like in general, a lot of Western societies attribute strength and stoicism to being masculine, right?
Right.
So if you're practicing vulnerability, is it a direct contradiction to being a man, or is vulnerability specific in certain contexts? Not necessarily when you're dating a woman, but maybe once you're in a long-term relationship with her, or are you only vulnerable with other men because you want to display strength for the women in your life? Like, there's so many variables to it, in my opinion, and so I'm very curious, because I feel like a lot of people propagate saying you need to be more vulnerable as a man, but they don't teach the balance of it. Like, you shouldn't be sobbing and crying at work every day. Like, you need to do your job and like be in control of your emotions, right?
Totally.
But it's not saying you shouldn't have those emotions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. And I would relate this back to my frontline work. I have to be emotionally available for the clients that I see, for the people that I see. That takes a lot of energy out of me. That takes a lot of to be in that space and to hear what they're saying and to actually try to feel what they're saying. It takes a lot. So what I do is I end up doing a lot of self-care. And that self-care for me is important, and I have to do it. And my fiance is really good at self-care. She does it a lot. And she knows why she's doing it, and we help each other in that respect. So you're right. There needs to be a balance. There needs to be a kind of an ebb and flow to regards to vulnerability. I'm just like, I feel that people need to be vulnerable. The time and place thing. It's like if someone's telling you a hurt and you know that it is a hurt for them, like that's a time when you gotta say like just stop talking and listen.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I even would say like crying all the time or like just showing your emotions willy-nilly is not vulnerable either, because is that your real truth? Like, is that your realness, or is it just something else? Like, what is it that it doesn't seem stable to me? But at the same time, like I think it also has to do a lot with communication. I find a lot of men, again, very general, broad topic, are very bad at communicating their emotions, are very bad at communicating to say like, hey, I'm feeling hurt right now, or I'm feeling frustrated because of this, or just I'm feeling hangry. Like, so many times we're just upset because we're just haven't eaten, and we're just gonna be like, listen, can we not talk right now? I haven't eaten anything. That's communication skill. Like you got to learn that too. So I think the balance of being vulnerable and communicate your actual emotions to other people is super important too. So yeah, I agree with you. There's an ebb and flow around it.
I really like what Paul just said. He's saying it's all context, whether you are stoic, available, or tender, and so on. It's driven by circumstances, and I completely agree.
Absolutely.
In the
I
respect
agree with that too.
context is a huge deal. But I feel like there's a lot of propagation or pushing for men to be more emotional, when in reality men are emotional. They're just not aware of it, or they're not in, or they don't have the vocabulary for it. So I would be more of someone to say men just need to be more aware of what they're feeling or why they're feeling it, and not feeling it more, because men are very in touch with anger and stuff like that.
No, I'm with you, Tim. I'm 100% with you there.
Yeah. And Paul just said something else. He said emotions always on the outside are the equivalent of undisciplined communications. Oh yeah, like dumping your props. Yeah, so there is a lot of like people who seem emotionally unstable seem to be like leeches, right? And so I could see where being vulnerable in the wrong context could make you seem like someone who can't handle life on their own. So it's just, it's a real art, and just in general. I would say.
I would say that too. Yeah, and like it's being vulnerable is being kind to yourself, and actually knowing what you're feeling with you, right? Like it's if you're feeling happy or joyful, if you're feeling frustrated or upset, like actually like feel that and know how that feels, because you're right, it all is all context in place, and actually to communicate that feeling is important. I think what the media says a lot about like vulnerable is that because they see that these guys are just shoving down their emotions into other things, and it just kind of explodes somewhere else.
Comes out sideways.
Like again, exactly what you're saying is like, what is the media actually trying to say? Or better said, like, and I blame the media since they're not very good communicators. What they're trying to say is that actually you have those emotions, feel them, and know what they are. Like it's not just happy, sad, fearful, and like joyful, but there's other spectrums of emotions that we can feel. Like there's being disappointed, there's being hurt, there's being embarrassed, there's being anxious. There's all these type of emotions that we really need to get in touch with and actually feel them and not communicate them. What exactly what you said.
And this is a big I really do feel like this specific topic really defines which side of the table some people are on. It's a very easy indicator. So Louis is asking, Louis, or I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name, but is asking, do you think that online communities and podcasts should stay out of politics? I don't know. I think that's impossible when it comes to gender identity and stuff like that.
I agree with that.
Because people, I mean, it's no longer a conversation about what's that called? Trying to think of the right word. Anyway, it's no longer science, it's politics at the core. It's like it's the same thing as like abortion now. It's a moral struggle, not like, I don't know, and it became political. So
totally. I try to lean into politics as best as I can, and sometimes I want to model as well too, to say like, sometimes I don't know what the answer is, or I don't know the information. I don't have enough information to say this, but at the very least, I want to say that I don't have enough information. But, and that I also want to learn. The last episode that I aired was about these kids in Palestine. And of course, like just even mentioning the word Palestine or even the word Israel is like already a political thing. Like I can't just avoid it, right? Like it's just it's impossible to avoid. But I said, I don't have an opinion on the Israel-Palestine thing because I don't know enough to actually make an opinion. But at the same time, like, even if I did, I don't know if I'd be comfortable to weigh in right now because I don't know exactly what's going on. I'm just telling you the story of this one filmmaker and what his idea is. And it's interesting because I went to my other venture is a hockey podcast. I'm good in hockey. And I'm like, we should lean into the politics. We should actually have more conversation about the politics of hockey because I think that informs a lot of the things that we do. We can't get away from politics. Like politics is around us, and I think we should be more informed about politics. I think North Americans in general and I know this because I come from South America and I'm Latino. I'm like, hey man, in South America, man, politics are everywhere, and they have no problem talking about politics. But I think North America, we have this kind of taboo of be like, ooh, don't rock the boat, like don't talk about politics. I think we should talk more about politics. I think we should get everyone's.
Yeah, I think that's because there seems to be, if someone disagrees with you, there's like this emotional loss of control, and people just get pissed.
Yeah.
Like, ah! Yeah. But it's like I love to hear people's beliefs and stuff. I'm generally not a very disagreeable individual, so I don't generally confront people. I just like to hear their thoughts, but sometimes I do. So I think that's why politics is such a sensitive subject, because honestly, a lot of people just don't know how to have a conversation around it rather than an argument, you know? So
it's true. It's true. But, and I think the more we talk about politics, the better conversations we'll have.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, to be more informed is better, but.
Yeah.
Well, Ermin, it's Ermin, right? You said Ermin?
Herman, yeah.
Herman. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, South American. It's all making sense now. So, Herman, for a closing question, this is what I always ask everyone.
Sure.
Since we're running out of time here, what is one fun fact about you that people generally don't know?
One fact about me that people don't know.
A fun one, yeah.
Let me think. Yeah, it's stupid, but I'll say it anyways. My middle name is Ariel.
Ariel. Okay.
Well, you know this probably from Facebook, because that's what it is. That's my middle name.
Uh-huh.
And I got made fun of this so much when I was a kid, because when I was younger, The Little Mermaid came out, and and you know what? That was like a thing of mine that really stuck on. I hated my name for a long time. I still sometimes I'm like, why do I? But you know what? I embrace my name now, because my dad has the same name as me, and you know, I'm trying to embrace my South American roots. But that's my middle name, and it was a source of hurt for a while time.
Yeah.
It was a source of like a little bit of like pain.
Yeah.
But now I'm trying to like embrace it as best as I can.
Very good. I like it.
Maybe one day I'll dress up like the Little Mermaid, and that'll come full circle.
Maybe for Halloween.
Yeah, I'll do that.
I love it. Okay, my fun fact. Let me see here. My fun fact is I played piano, jazz. I played piano for a jazz band in high school. I was on the second tier team, but I wasn't as cool.
Nice.
But that's not as emotionally traumatic as having a name like Ariel. So
it's all good. It's just part of my story, and that's just part of your story too. Like being in a band. Do you still play?
I'll play every now and then. I miss it, but moving around so much, I don't have the ability to carry a piano with me everywhere. So
fair. Do you guys know where you can just?
Oh, can't.
Nope.
Oh, it just cut out.
Hello.
Weird. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you guys have like those community pianos in where you live?
When I was in Washington, yeah, they're there. I would play it. There's like this one under a bridge that's really fun to play, but
right.
Didn't get to go there very much. So anyway, well, let's wrap this up. What are some ways people can reach out to you? I've tagged your podcast in the post, but what are some other ways people can get in touch if they want to?
Sure, for sure. You can always reach out you use the Facebook page, you totally can. You can go to the website, it's modernmanhood.org.
Okay.
You can email me. You can tweet at me at modernmanpod. You can go on Instagram, the same thing as modernmanpod. As well, I'm also a part of an organization called Next Gen Men.
Okay.
You can check out Next Gen Men at nextgenmen.ca. If you're in Canada, you're in Calgary and Toronto, they're doing some awesome stuff. I'm trying to do some awesome stuff here in Edmonton with them. They're an awesome organization. I'm happy to be partner with them. So yeah, check them out too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for letting me pick your brain and have a good time, and we will add all those links.
No problem.
Somewhere, one of these sides. And yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in, and please let us know if you watched it to the end, because I'll give you a high five. And
thanks for the great questions, everyone. Though those are really good questions.
Yeah, that was fun. So,
yeah.
All right, you have a good day now. All right.
See ya.
Bye.